I'm proud to welcome all of you here today as we celebrate a new chapter in the life of our only child, Wesley. When my father's speech ended, the room was filled with applause. I quietly lowered my hand, holding my glass to my lap, and looked down. Over 200 guests were focused on the couple standing under the lights, my brother, dressed in an immaculate white tuxedo, and his flawless bride beside him. But there wasn't a seat for me. The $40,000 invoice I'd paid for this ceremony flickered through my mind. It was me who had made this entire event possible. And yet, no one knew. Or maybe they knew and chose to look away. That's when it hit me. I was never really part of this family. Not in any way that counted. My name is Stacy Anderson. I live in a small apartment in Somerville, just outside Boston, and work in donor relations at a nonprofit organization. I'm not wealthy, but I take pride in my work, helping children in need every day. Today was my younger brother Wesley's wedding. He's the perfect son whose college and career were entirely funded by our parents. More than 200 guests gathered at a historic church outside Boston, showering the couple with applause and smiles. I used my savings to cover the cost of this wedding. But I was completely invisible in the celebration I had made possible. I flipped through the ceremony program I'd received at the entrance again and again, but my name wasn't printed anywhere. Not under family acknowledgments, not among the speakers, not in the list for family photos. I wanted to believe it was a mistake. But it wasn't. I wasn't acknowledged because, to them, I didn't exist. At the reception, I was directed to a table marked Caldwell's plus guests. Even there, my name wasn't among the place cards. I asked a passing waiter, "Excuse me, is there a seat here for Stacy Anderson?" He looked at me and hesitated. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Are you with the catering staff?" All I could do was laugh. I forced a polite smile and replied, "No." Then I quietly returned to the edge of the room. Then came the speeches. My father, Robert, stood at the mic and began in his calm, familiar tone. "Thank you all for joining us today to celebrate the beginning of a new chapter in the life of our only child, Wesley." Only child? That phrase hit me like ice. What about me? I was the one who paid for the wedding. Did I not even exist in their memory? Dazed, I opened the congratulatory card on the table. Embossed in gold were the words, "To our perfect son, Wesley, you are our pride, our only child." A cold weight sank in my chest. I felt like a ghost. All those years I spent with Grandma until she passed. The small financial help I offered when Wesley started college. The gifts I sent every year for our parents' anniversary. All of it had been erased. It was as if I had never been part of this family at all. Flashbulbs kept going off. The cake cutting. The family photos with our parents standing beside the newlyweds. When the photographer called out, "Family of the Andersons, please come forward." My mother, Hillary, raised her hand to stop him. "We're all here already." I couldn't speak. I didn't even have the strength to try. As the reception neared its end, my Aunt Kathy quietly approached me. "Stacy, why are you over here? Where's your seat?" I gave a small, bitter smile and shrugged. There isn't one. No place card, no table. I'm not even counted as a guest. And I paid for the whole wedding. Her face darkened. What? What do you mean? You don't have a seat? You paid for everything? What's going on? I looked down and said softly, It's okay. I realized something today. I was never really family to them. At those words, my aunt fell silent and gently took my hand. Strangely, I didn't cry. There was only a quiet certainty in my chest. As the reception came to a close and I began to leave the venue, Wesley rushed up to me, out of breath. Thank you for coming today, Stacy. I really appreciate it. His words made me stop in my tracks, and I said calmly, Congratulations, Wesley. But action speaks louder than words. I smiled faintly and turned away, leaving the venue behind. It wasn't until the chill of the night air brushed against my skin that I could fully return to reality. Holding up the hem of my dress, I made my way back to my small apartment. Once I reached home, I sat down at the kitchen table, opened my journal, and began to write slowly. June 12th, 2024. Today, I let go of the illusion of family. From now on, I begin a journey to reclaim my own worth. The ink didn't smudge. The words were etched clean and steady onto the page. Days had passed since Wesley's wedding. Even after returning to work, I felt disconnected. Outside the office window, the early summer sunlight was bright, but inside me, a heavy shadow lingered. On the surface, everything was normal. Coordinating educational support programs for children, contacting donors, preparing for the charity event at the end of the month. My work at the nonprofit organization was busy and fulfilling. But somewhere deep inside, I still couldn't make peace with what had happened at my brother's wedding. That night, I came home and pulled out a cardboard box filled with old documents. It held notebooks used by my grandmother, Dorothy, before she passed away, letters she'd written to me, and records bank statements, payment receipts, things I hadn't looked at in years. But at that time, I felt an overwhelming need to confirm something. One statement caught my eye. It read, Wesley Anderson wedding, Meadowhall Garden, deposit $15,000. The date was exactly 8 months ago. Back then, I hadn't questioned anything. My parents had asked, and I'd paid. Because I wanted to do it for his happiness. The invoices that followed detailed venue rental, catering, floral arrangements, planner fees amounting to nearly $40,000, all withdrawn from my account. My memories blurred. I never wanted praise. Just a simple thank you would have been enough. Instead, I got that speech, without even a place card. As I kept searching the drawer, I found an old photo of Wesley's college graduation party. In the picture, my parents, Wesley, and a few relatives standing together. I managed the reception, greeted guests, arranged refreshments, everything. And yet, I wasn't in the photo. I checked social media, just to be sure. My mother had posted the photo with the caption, Our Perfect Family. Hashtags, OnlySin, Pride. The words pierced me like needles. Then I remembered I had sent her a message that day. Just, thanks for today, you must be tired. No reply. Just like always. Maybe I was the only one pretending not to see it. Going further through the box, I found florist invoices for my parents' anniversary party, email exchanges with caterers, bank transfers, all from me. All paid by me. Everything I had done at all. I opened a small box on the shelf. Inside was a photo of Grandma Dorothy and me, side by side. She was the only one who ever truly saw what I did. Back when I used to help around the house while my mother was too busy, she'd always offer kind words. "This brooch is for you. Don't forget to live for yourself, okay?" With those words, my grandmother placed the antique brooch into my hand while she was still alive. But after she passed on, my mother took the brooch without a word and handed it to Wesley. He's her only grandson, it's only right. And I accepted that, without question. That night, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my friend Jessica. "Stacy, your brother's wedding looked amazing. Saw the pictures on Instagram. Were you in any of them?" I stared at the screen for a while. No, I wasn't. Of course I wasn't. I didn't respond. When I closed my eyes, a chill ran down my spine. This wasn't an accident. It had taken time, but little by little, I'd been erased from my family's memory, erased from their photos, made invisible even when I was the one organizing it all. Eventually, even my existence was denied. I sank deeper into my chair and buried my face in my hands. I couldn't take it anymore. A soundless cry rose from deep within. I was finally facing the truth. This erasure hadn't happened overnight. It had been deliberately, carefully constructed over years. And in the quiet of my heart, a small flame flickered. It wasn't anger, it was a clear, unwavering question. Why is my name nowhere to be found? And am I really okay with that? From that moment on, I was no longer just a shadow in my own family. I was preparing to reclaim my own life. That night marked a turning point. Piece by piece, I began unearthing the fragments buried deep in my memory. Why had my family gone to such lengths to erase me? Why had no one, despite my outward politeness and constant support, ever shown me real gratitude or respect? As I searched for those answers, I arrived at a deeper question. The apartment my grandmother had left me, this place. Before she passed, Dorothy had told me, "I'm keeping this for you. It's meant to be yours." It was a rare find in the Boston suburbs, old, yes, but well-maintained, peaceful, and filled with a kind of quiet warmth. It was where I began living on my own after college. I'd been covering all the utilities and maintenance, and though the rental income was modest, I saw it as a foundation for my future stability. But something felt off. I hadn't received any property tax notices for the past 2 years. They had always come directly to me before. I decided to check the city's online property registry. It took a bit of effort, but I had registered once before and managed to log in. And then I was speechless. The ownership name wasn't mine. Instead, it read Robert and Hillary Anderson. My parents. The transfer had been recorded just 2 weeks before Wesley's wedding. The exact time I had been footing the bill for the event. My blood ran cold. I told myself it had to be a mistake and refreshed the page again and again. But the name never changed. The apartment my grandmother had left me had quietly slipped out of my hands and into my parents' portfolio. I opened the cardboard box again and began digging for old documents. I remembered there was a copy of my grandmother's will somewhere. I found the faded envelope, tore it open, and read the lines. "I leave this apartment solely to my granddaughter, Stacy Anderson. because she is the only one in this family who possesses true responsibility and integrity. My chest tightened. She had seen me. She had truly understood. And yet her will hadn't been honored in the property record. Why? I immediately called my Aunt Kathy. She fell silent on the other end of the line before quietly saying, "So, you figured it out. I'm sorry, Stacy. Hillary said she was just organizing the household matters, and she insisted we didn't need to tell you." "But it's mine," I said. "Grandma told me that." "I know. I believe that too, but she's always been obsessed with keeping up appearances. She honestly believes Wesley is the only one worthy of inheriting anything." I couldn't bring myself to blame Kathy further. I could hear the conflict in her voice. But that didn't make it right. Next, I reviewed the property's maintenance records. Repairs, plumbing, repainting, roof patching, all paid directly from my bank account. Every receipt was meticulously filed. And yet, the rent? It had never reached me. The rental payments had been quietly redirected to a joint account held by my parents. It wasn't rage that surged through me, just hollow exhaustion. I had simply fulfilled my role, diligently and honestly. And somehow, that has made me easy to use, easy to erase. That night, I saved screenshots of everything: the forged registry, the payment history, my grandmother's will. I gathered them into a single folder and asked myself, this can't be something I let go. Enough years had passed in silence. I didn't want revenge on my family. I just wanted my life back, and for the things I had cared for to be returned. I exhaled, slowly and deliberately. From here on, it was a fight. But beyond that fight, I saw a glimmer of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Ever since the day I discovered the apartment ownership had been forged, I endured countless sleepless nights. I would wake in the middle of the night, staring at the ceiling, forced to sit with the storm of anger and sorrow swirling deep inside me. But I knew I couldn't keep enduring in silence anymore. I had to reclaim my life, and my own worth that had been trampled for so long. I didn't want to act out of anger. But bringing the truth to light through rightful, legal means, that was something I refused to compromise on. I decided to reach out to someone I could trust. Thomas Hansen. He was once the legal advisor for a children's protection nonprofit organization I had volunteered for. He's calm, rational, and fiercely principled. I knew Thomas would look at this without any bias and judge it for what it was. Once I finished telling him everything, he looked at me and said, "This case involves serious concerns of inheritance fraud and property record falsification. Our first step is to organize the evidence. Don't lead with emotion, lead with facts." I scanned each document from the mountain of papers on my desk and sent them to him. My grandmother's will, copies of the property registry, repair invoices, bank records showing the change in rental deposit destination, and notes from my call with Aunt Kathy. I also began compiling all proof related to the wedding expenses, bank transfers, emails with the wedding planner, statements from my account. "You didn't tell your brother about these payments?" Thomas asked. I nodded. "No. My parents asked me not to. They said they wanted to surprise him. And I believed them. You were deceived. But that doesn't mean you have to stay deceived. You have legal standing here." For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. Thomas quickly began taking the steps necessary to move forward legally. First, he brought in a handwriting expert to verify the alleged forged signature. They would compare Dorothy Anderson's signature on the altered registry to cards and letters she had written to me during her life. It took a week to receive the results. In the meantime, I combed through old messages, making sure I hadn't missed anything. And then, a week later, I received a call from Thomas. As expected, the signature used in the property transfer was forged. Sloppily, too. The analyst confirmed a very high probability that it was artificially mimicked by a third party. Something inside me crystallized. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a calculated theft of my rights and my inheritance. With the evidence in place, Thomas began preparing a formal notice to my family, demanding the return of the apartment's ownership and full reimbursement of the wedding expenses. Please review this draft and let me know if anything needs to be changed. The document he sent outlined the following demands in my name: immediate restoration of the apartment's ownership to me, a formal apology and compensation for the deliberate destruction or alteration of Dorothy Anderson's will, full reimbursement of all wedding expenses for Wesley Anderson, including interest, a clear warning that failure to comply would result in legal action and disclosure of the truth to the extended family. As I read through the document, I let out a deep, steady breath. This wasn't revenge. It was my effort to finally protect the worth I had allowed others to ignore. Still, my heart wavered. How would my parents respond? How much did Wesley actually know? And what would the word family even mean after this? But I knew I had to keep going. For the past 10 years, I had put myself second for their sake. Thomas ended with one final remark. "You're doing the right thing. In fact, I'm amazed at how composed you've been through all of this. You're not alone. I'm with you." I nodded quietly. And later that night, while making coffee in the kitchen, I whispered aloud to myself, "I won't let anyone take anything from me ever again." Saying it out loud eased something in me. This life was mine. And finally, it was time to prove it. A few days after sending the notice, I received no formal response from my parents. Only one message from my mother. "Stop this nonsense. You're only embarrassing yourself. This won't end well for you." Those words stirred no emotion in me. I couldn't even bring myself to feel disappointed. Just a quiet thought, this is who she really is. There was no more doubt in me. Through Thomas, the official complaint had already been filed with the court. All that remained was to present the facts one by one. But I chose to take one more step. Before the lawsuit began, I wanted my extended family to know the truth. About the will, about the forgery, about the wedding. For years I had stayed silent for the sake of appearances. Now I have decided to speak out. Aunt Kathy offered to help. "You deserve to tell them why you've been hurt. They need to hear it from you." She coordinated a family dinner and reserved a private room in a restaurant. Uncles, cousins, and family friends from my father's side attended. My parents and Wesley were there too. When I entered, my mother forced a tight smile. My father stayed completely silent. As I handed out the documents I had prepared, the room fell completely quiet. Everyone's eyes dropped to the papers, occasionally glancing up at me. I spoke. This is why I'm taking legal action. Grandma's will was altered. The property records were forged. I was deliberately removed from the family. No one said a word. I don't want revenge. I just want to take back what is mine. I paused, then continued. I paid for Wesley's entire wedding, every cent. And yet on that day, I didn't even have a seat. I was treated like I didn't exist. Wesley looked at me for the first time, eyes wide. I had no idea. I didn't know you paid for the wedding, or about the apartment. I nodded. If you'd known everything, I don't think I could have recovered. That's why I want to believe you didn't know. But even so, you still have a responsibility. My mother stood abruptly. What good does this do? You think breaking apart this family will bring you peace? No, I said. It was already broken long before today. All I'm doing is to finally stand up for myself. And the truth deserves to be known. My father avoided my gaze, silent to the end. But after that silence, the documents I'd handed out began circulating quickly among the relatives. Through the hands of my aunt and cousins, the full extent of the wrongdoing spread, and the fact that my parents had forged my grandmother's will and embezzled her estate became a matter of public knowledge. The carefully maintained illusion of the Anderson family slowly, but surely, began to collapse. Weeks later, the court proceedings began. When I stood in the courtroom, I didn't shake. I didn't burn with anger. I simply planted my feet firmly on the ground. The evidence Thomas submitted was airtight. The handwriting analysis, the original will, payment records, Aunt Kathy's testimony. Even faced with these facts, my parents clung to tired denials. It was a mistake. We didn't mean any harm. Excuses shallow, desperate, and devoid of responsibility. Watching them, I felt something within me seal off quietly, permanently. And then, on the day of the verdict, the judge delivered the ruling in a calm, measured voice. The will of Dorothy Anderson is declared valid. The apartment is to be legally returned to the plaintiff, Stacy Anderson. Furthermore, the defendants are ordered to compensate her for all related financial damages. I closed my eyes gently. It didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a return to my life, to my dignity. It had been restored not with shouts or vengeance, but through a judge's calm voice in a quiet courtroom. 6 months passed. The apartment was officially returned to me. With the income it generated, I founded a new nonprofit, the Dorothy Project. It became both a shelter for children escaping abuse and domestic violence, and a scholarship program for those in need. Launching it wasn't easy. But after surviving the long and painful battle with my family, I had nothing left to fear. Slowly, supporters began to gather. People who donated, volunteered, showed up. They weren't bound to me by blood, but by something far deeper, shared purpose, and mutual care. Together, we started building something that finally felt like a real family. Meanwhile, the fall of the Anderson household was swift. Following the trial, my father's company lost the trust of shareholders and clients. Accounting irregularities were exposed, and he was eventually forced out. My mother, too, found herself quietly cast out from the social circles she once ruled. Everything she had done to preserve the image of a perfect family was stripped bare. I heard they sold their suburban house and moved to a modest apartment. My brother could no longer maintain the glamorous life that had always been propped up by our parents. With the financial support gone, he gave up his luxury condo and has since changed jobs multiple times. The title of the only child no longer drew applause. I never wanted revenge. All I ever wanted was to restore truth to my life. Many of my relatives, those who once turned away, began to distance themselves from my parents and brother. Some of them finally confronted the brokenness they had long ignored. And a few even came forward, clearly and kindly saying, "We're on your side." They supported my decisions, and some have started contributing to my nonprofit organization or volunteering in our programs. For the first time, I felt understood by people who shared my passion. Perhaps, in the end, every lie collapses under the weight of its own fiction. Justice isn't loud, but it's inevitable. One day, Thomas came by the Dorothy Project's office. He needed to go over some legal documents, but as he was leaving, he handed me a small envelope. This came through the Andersons' legal representative. They requested that it be returned to you. Inside was a small pouch. Resting within it was my grandmother's antique brooch. The one my mother had claimed should belong to her only grandson, Wesley, and was taken from me without a second thought. At last, it had found its way back to me. There were no words enclosed. But for me, that was enough. Somehow I felt my grandmother's love returning to me across time and betrayal. I sat for a while, the brooch resting in my palm. No, I hadn't forgiven them. But my shoulders felt lighter. I hadn't won against the past. I had freed myself from it. At the shelter, the children opened up slowly, one day at a time. One afternoon, a little girl handed me a paper flower she had folded and said, "I'm glad I came here. I want to come again tomorrow." I smiled and responded, "Of course you can. You're always welcome. This is your place now." The words I had once longed to hear from my family, I could now offer them to someone else. I had found my family in those who are connected through kindness, not genetics. This is the family I have chosen. And now, finally, I can say my name without hesitation. Stacy Anderson. Not someone's daughter, not someone's sister. Just me, standing on my own.